Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Awesome 80s podcast. This is Michael.
This is Lawrence. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. MH is with me. We're in his studio. Wave,
Another-
MH.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Wax on. Wax on. How's it going today, Michael? Friday afternoon.
Going good. Going good. We do the afternoon podcast, which keeps it going for us, which is nice.
Every now and then, you got to mix it up.
So this week we're going to be doing the 1986 classic Space Camp. But before we do that, we did get some listener mail from a Patreon supporter and friend of the podcast, Doiner. I'll go ahead and read it. A few nights back, I watched Flashdance on Netflix. Flashdance is one of those movies I know all about, but I've never sat down and watched until a few nights ago. It's a good movie. I already own the soundtrack after watching the movie. I did a bit of fantasy thinking. What was it like seeing this movie in theaters in 1983? I mean, between the dancing and the hip thrusting, it must have been one wild night at the movies.
Yeah.
You guys have any movies that you missed that you would love to have seen in the theaters?
Well, first of all, I thought that was going to be a letter from Penthouse Forum, so I started.
With the hip thrusting?
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know. I saw Ghostbusters in the theater when I was little. Well, for you, it's probably Star Wars, right?
Yeah, I get. Yeah, probably because I think. Yeah, if that would have at all been possible, because I saw Jedi probably 3 times in the theater, because they brought it back later on too.
So, I would say I saw Back to the Future 1 for me. I saw 2 and 3 in the theater when it came out. I would have liked to have seen Back to the Future when it came out in the theater.
That is a good answer. I think that is a good answer, because I remember seeing 2 and 3. Like, I think I was at the age, and you were probably at the age too, where like your parents were like, just go to the mall, just go to the movie theater, just get out of the house. But when I wasn't at that age for Back to the Future 1. Doiner, he is the writer and head of the wrestling portion of the Drunken Zombie podcasting network. I know Disco Stew doesn't advertise, but Doiner managed to interview him and feature him in a 2-part interview series if anyone is interested. And reading up on that, available at the Drunken Zombie podcast network, drunkenzombie.com.
I don't know a lot about this Disco Stew character, but I found that interview riveting and fascinating.
It was a good read.
Did you read it?
I did.
All right.
You run across these people online and you just find yourself falling in love all over again.
I did. So we have some shows coming up.
Yes.
Those shows include, but not limited to, next week, The Princess Bride. I think showtime to be announced on that. Is that correct? I don't
Yes.
think we've set a time. Then coming up after that, we have Rain Man for our annual Oscar selection. I finally won out and got Rain Man. It only took me 7 years. Wow.
Squeezing and hurt and pulled my neck 1988.
And then we have a couple guests episodes after that. We have Keith Coogan for his 3rd time coming back to
the podcast that brings you the guy from Adventures in Babysitting 3 different times.
Because we're awesome and he's awesome, and he's coming to discuss he's coming to discuss Under the Boardwalk.
Oh.
And then
He was part of the wave of boardwalk movies at that point.
yes,
The Beaches. There was The Beaches has very important Shag. There's other movies that are specifically just about the boardwalk.
so then he's going to discuss and then we have Chris Vanderkay. I'm sorry, MF Jones is texting me during this, which is causing me to not know what I'm doing. So
we do have Chris Vanderkay again. He's back since House. I guess probably a year ago since we had the baby. It's been almost a year. I mean, she's got 1 day and 1 month. She'll be a year old. But he was there for House, and I'm super jealous of the House episode. It was really good. I thought he's good. He could start his own podcast. He's very entertaining, and he wrote another book, Horror Films by Subgenre, A Viewer's Guide by McFarlane Publishers.
Yes, so we'll talk about that book at length.
And also Night of the Creeps.
Night of the Creeps, which I've never seen, but you have recommended that we watch. So I'm going to watch it. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, that's our upcoming schedule for the next month. So look what we just did there. We gave people advance notice. So
we're trying to become that podcast where we give people advance notice. But with Night of the Creeps, I did want to. It's a horror comedy, and it feels like if you're ever going to love this genre or even accept this genre into your life, it needs to be through the comedic form, Glenn. Like the film I made for you last year, I'd say it's more of a science fiction comedy.
It was lovely. I'll never forget it.
You're welcome.
I'd love a copy of it.
Okay.
I'm still scarred from that.
So why did you choose Space Camp?
Well, I guess as a mask, because I really did want to talk about the Challenger and then how it affected your life, like especially like when you're a little kid. Because we talked about the super violent moments when McMahon got picked up and thrown up down into the ground by that Packer, and that was pretty intense for a little kid. But then also having the Challenger explode, like it was the first time you'd see something on TV over and over and over again. I'd liken it to like Bill Buckner. Like honestly, the most things people have seen on ESPN is probably the ball going through Buckner's legs. Like that is what people have probably seen the most. But for me though, like I probably saw the Challenger explode like 100 times that day. You know, you go home from school early and it was like 100 times. And especially like when future tragedies happen, you're like, all right, I saw it twice. I don't need to see this ever again, especially when they show human people explode or die.
Right.
But I did also love this movie in 1986, and I had it on beta, and it was a family favorite of my family. And as far as when you're a little kid, you walk into that door room in kindergarten, you're like, what do you want to do? I want to be a cowboy. I want to be a fireman, and I want to be an astronaut. And with Space Camp, you can go along, and you can be an astronaut. Are you aware? Like I saw somebody when I was working at the clothing store where everything is 1/2 off the lowest ticketed price.
In the panties section.
In the panties. A lady came in with the Space Camp shirt. I'm like, oh man, Space Camp's awesome. I wish I could have gone to Space Camp. She's like, you know what? There's an adult Space Camp. I'm ready to take time off of work right now. So it would be cool. I mean, I'm sure it would be super expensive, but if
and you never went,
a child or multiple children could go to Space Camp.
To adult Space Camp?
Well, I could go right now.
Well, no, you can't because you have a child.
Yeah, I thought it'd be better to go with the child, like when they're older.
Everything
like, you're in camp right now. I'm also in camp. You're not supposed to talk to me.
So the movie Space Camp opens up with what only could be described as horrible 80s space graphics.
Yeah, it was not good.
Yeah, my note for that was it's the classic Dreamer opening where people are just looking up at the stars, wondering
what's out there.
Like, there's other special effects in this movie that are okay. Like, it goes from okay to like, whoa, that looks bad.
Inmates just challenged you to name one okay special effects.
One.
So our bad 80s space graphics descend into a girl in a cornfield.
Wheatfield.
And then next thing we see is Tom Skerritt, astronaut.
He's handsome.
Moonwalker.
He is handsome.
You cannot believe how handsome this guy is.
He's he reminds me of a guy sitting on a porch with a picket fence, maybe watering his steel magnolias, just chilling,
shooting birds.
I think he could be. You know, he could also be a small town sheriff if he put his mind to it. I think,
or maybe a owner of a conglomerate who buys a Boston bar.
Maybe.
Sky's the limit.
Space is the limit. So sky is not the limit. Sky is not the limit. He goes beyond the sky.
I challenge you to define where the sky ends and begins.
Oh, jeez. So, we get the arrival of the space camp montage. We see the Hawaiian T-shirt wearing Drifter, played by Tate Donovan, one-time boyfriend of Jennifer Aniston.
Remember when Jeep Wranglers were a thing?
I still want a Jeep.
I think they're still pretty cool. One of my coworkers has it. It's pretty cool. I don't think it does well with gas mileage, but I mean, for just cruising around town or whatever. You know what? If you lived in a beach community, throw your board in there, your whatever, be perfect.
So there's the montage, bunch of clean cut, well motivated, all American kids coming to space camp.
But Tate Donovan, he's got a different ethos. He likes to sleep late, drive fast, and not take anything too seriously.
He does what he wants to do. We see Leah Thompson briefly.
She doesn't drive to space camp. She flies in her World War II trainer Stearman aircraft with her father. You're to assume it's her dad.
Yeah. And then Andy. Andy, I presumed, and maybe I missed something in the beginning because I didn't realize till the very end. I thought Andy, the female wannabe astronaut running space camp, I thought she was Tom Skerritt's daughter, but wife?
Their husband and wife.
Was that established in the beginning?
In the very beginning, they talk about being married and how they're a family. Like right after she gets
talking to Jake.
Because she said, you're not going to be the only one in this family to walk on the moon.
Right. Well, I took that to mean that that was her dad.
Tom Skerritt, he's timeless. I guess it kind of, to me, it felt like a greatest hits of like 80s actors that they threw, 80s kid actors a little bit that they threw into this movie. I mean, they got Andy, who was in Kate Capshaw, who's in Temple of Doom, and famous for being married to Steven Spielberg. And then they've got Trish Ambrosia, who Kelly Preston. First boobs I ever saw was in Mischief. You know, she's also famous for being John Travolta's beard. And,
you beat me to the joke.
And she does have a photographic memory, which comes in later in the film. And then Rudy T. He was first in Iron Eagle, but we're mostly remembered as Lamar, who could be your friend or your lover from Revenge of the Nerds.
Iron Eagle is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. And then, of course, Lee Phoenix, who plays Yaquin Max. He's famous for being in Ruskies, one of my favorites. He's being Johnny Cash, a Roman emperor's son, and a guy who falls in love with robot women. And he was Leaf until then.
Yeah.
Do we know why he's no longer Leaf?
I assume because his brother OD'd on heroin.
Well, I guess they said they kept playing like the 911 call over and over again. Do you remember hearing about this, like in the courtroom? And he's like, I don't want my name to be Leaf anymore because it kept.
Oh, I was just literally making a joke. I had no.
That's just how Glenn happens his way into jokes. Also, Inherent Vice, it came out last year. It's actually a really good movie. I think it's probably the best movie he's been in as far as like his acting.
So we get to space camp. We're in the line. You get a sign where you're going to go, and that's where we find out first that Tate Donovan, he's a scam artist, man. He wants to be with Leah Thompson. He wants to bone her.
If he's going to this stupid space camp, he's going to get his dick wet.
We have the first female pilot, Andy Bremstrom. Black nerd, Rudy Tyler.
If you look at the style at the time, like her hair and her everything, it's like very Sally Ride. It's very like all the other female astronauts at the time. Like, I need a poofy and curly hair, and it's got to be dark. Yeah, this is perfect.
And then who played her? Kate Capshaw, I believe.
Yeah.
What's she famous for?
For being married to Steven Spielberg. We talked.
Still didn't take his last name though. Took her first husband's last name still.
Huh. Well, that's a professional name.
I'm just saying. We have Tish, the Valley Girl.
But she's super smart. I mean, she's really concerned about the blue jumpsuit that they have to wear. She tries to make it more form-fitting. She tries to add little accessories to it. She is not happy with the way she looks in this outfit, but it is a required uniform.
I thought it was interesting for her because she first thing she would do was give a makeover, and then throughout the movie she always has like the real thick eyeshadow, the glittery, like you were saying, the accessories, the wild outfits. It was just kind of, I don't want to say rebellish for the 80s, but it was different.
Would you say it's almost like Material Girl?
I was thinking, they're kind of going after something along that lines, very material girlish.
We have Max. Max is supposed to be in junior camp, but he's been there a few times, and he really wants to get to senior camp. Now, I would think there's a lot of insurance liability. Obviously, this movie proves that they didn't care about that. But Andy just is like, yeah, fine. Like, she tried twice, and then she's like, fine, just come with me.
And then also when Tate Donovan's character Kevin shows up, Hideo Takanimi was supposed to be on the group, and she's like, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah. Catherine, played by Leah Thompson, she just wants to be in the military.
She's ready to be in the Air Force Academy.
Yeah, that's what it was. She really wants to be the one who controls the flight. She doesn't want to be the pilot.
You talked about being bossy. She's like, just because she said something from her, like a quote from her mother in the movie, like, just because you're bossy doesn't mean you're the boss or something. Like, obviously she's been known as the bitch before, and she wants to be the first female shuttle commander, and you got to have leadership capabilities. But later on, Kate Capshaw says that she sees something inside Catherine, that she has it in her to be a shuttle commander.
So we basically have the nerdy 8-year-old who knows everything. We have the Valley girl, the smart Valley girl, the bossy girl who thinks she can do everything, being Leah Thompson, the screw up guy Kevin, and then the black nerd. So
yeah, but he talks about
Breakfast Club.
Yeah, well, he talks about how he's not really that good at anything as far as science. Like Rudy talks about how he loves science. He just takes him forever to get it, but once he gets it, he gets it.
Then we see the hot space camp girls dorm.
Did you see underwear pillow fights at all in this movie?
Close. I'd say pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Dish talks about dick size.
Especially for a children's movie. It's nice.
Well, she just insinuated with her big hands. So that tells me that size does matter.
No, it's like girth. It's like Red Bull to Coke can. Like, that's what's important.
As Carlson proved it, anything will work.
There is another character in the movie, a robotic character named Jinx.
That Jinx is an asshole.
Yeah, it's a lot like R2-D2, just not as pretty, and it's Max's best friend. You get Max is super smart, but he has trouble making friends either with the older kids or the younger kids. So his best friend is Jinx, the robot.
Yeah, I had the same thing. He's more of an outcast in the R2-D2. They're trying to capitalize on his popularity from the Star Wars saga.
And there is also maybe like 20 different references just to Star Wars in this.
Star Wars, yeah. Trying to bring in the other viewership.
But I mean, it kind of made me feel like, especially in that time period, I'm sure everyone was making references to that. I'm sure everyone who went to space camp was a super Star Wars nerd or a super Star Trek nerd. I'm sure it wasn't uncommon for people to be making Star Trek references, making Star Wars references when they went to space camp.
Absolutely.
So, where do we go from the pillow fights in the girls' dorm room?
We do have some training because they got to learn. They are going to know how to run a space, even though they may not be going up someday. I'm going to go up there someday. Even though they may not go up there someday, they are going to know how to work this thing.
Yeah, they're training, and then they have Rogue, where they go out to the shuttle. They're trying to pull some strings to do some improper activities, which I thought it was kind of interesting, that because in some of those typically the 80s movies, even though people screwed up in the plot, it all worked out well in the end. Almost in every 80s movie, for every mistake that was made, it worked out well in the end.
That's just how things happen,
I guess.
So Tate Donovan, he gets ratted out by Jinx the robot, but he still blames Max. And he keeps calling him Han Solo, and he wants to be called Luke Skywalker, and he doesn't understand, like, how come we just can't be best friends? You and I have so much in common. And later on in the movie, when they're on the van heading towards the space shuttle, he he just sits down next to him. He's like, what's wrong? He's like, nothing, nothing. You're sitting down to me, next to me, and talking to me like a real person. We are best friends. We're Max and Kevin. We're Max and Kevin. We're best friends getting ready to get on the space shuttle.
So, and yeah, Jinx and Max, best friends forever. They relate. But all the guys are trying to like get at Jinx, trying to bully him around.
Yeah, him and Rudy they walk in on all the other kids messing with Jinx and messing with Max, and Max gets to a situation where he has to put him back together. Somehow he's got this multi-million-dollar machine in his locker that he puts back together and Frankenstein's it into becoming his best friend. After him and Kevin have the initial fight because they gave away his position to the heads of Space Camp when he went to go try to make out with Leah Thompson. He says, I want to go to outer space. Then I'll be happy if I go to outer space. And so Jinx decides he's going to make that happen.
So where do we go from here?
So it's kind of like a movie of montages up until they go and get on the space shuttle. They do have a lot of training montages, but the biggest one is when they screw up and they're in the space shuttle, and you can tell the people like the Space Camp kids that are in the command center are messing with them too, giving them different problems to solve, which they should be able to solve. But then they just have a giant train wreck. Rudy gets into a fight with Leah Thompson. What the hell's Leah Thompson again? Catherine. And so they're fighting, and Tate Donovan, he's not taking command of the space shuttle, and he's just being a giant jackass the whole time. I think it's a pretty funny scene. He does a lot of different kind of voices and stuff and pretends to be like an airline pilot. And he also, I think he's making a Cheech and Chong reference while he's in the space shuttle as well too.
So basically it breaks down like this. These people show in simulators that they are incapable of doing anything remotely close to flying a fake space shuttle. They suck at everything they do. They argue. No one gets along. And then the next scene, Tom Skerritt's like, hey, we're going to let you try it in a real space shuttle. I mean, simulation, but you guys obviously are the best.
Because this is always that kind of fuzzy. I'm when like rewatching it, you're like, how the fuck did they get from space camp to on top of this rocket and then into outer space? It doesn't make any sense at all. But this is what happens. So they're on the top of the rocket, like they go in the van, they're traveling, they get out of the van, they all get in the space shuttle, and then they're there to test the rockets, and then one of them doesn't ignite. What did you get from that?
Well, Jinx had like coordinated with the computer to basically make it so they were going to have to either lift off or they were going to burn to death because the heat shield was overheating because they both didn't ignite. Okay. So then they had to ignite the second one or they would have exploded right there at liftoff without lifting off.
Okay, that makes sense.
So Jinx was like talking to the NASA computer, and he's like, how can we get him into space? And NASA's computer's like, we can't. And he goes, well, what if we did this? And NASA's computer's like, yeah, that could work. And then they're like, okay, let's do that. So then NASA, because there's that scene with Tom Skerritt where he's in the control center, and they're like, hey, we either have to do this or they're going to explode right here. And Tom Skerritt's like, send him into space. There were only two options.
And then there's also other space camp kids that are in the actual NASA command center. And then they're like looking at him flying into space, and they're like, oh man, how come we couldn't be on the
space shuttle and go back to space camp?
Yeah. I guess the biggest problem here is there's no parents at all. They're like, should we tell the parents that we accidentally shot their children into outer space?
And then there's like 4 bald press guys like smoking cigarettes, and they're like, we have nothing to report. And they're like, okay, just keep smoking. So what happens is now we have Andy and these screw-up kids launching into outer space. And that's going to take us about 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So we could probably sum it up fairly quickly because there's not a lot of substance to this movie. So they're like, okay, cool, we're in space. And then like 30 seconds later, they're like, oh man, we're not going to have enough oxygen, because they figured out that they were going to need to wait 12 hours to get a clear path back to go back to the atmosphere.
To Edwards Air Force Base.
Yes. So they're like, oh man, we only have 12 hours worth of oxygen. We're going to need at least 14. And then, and they lose communication. At least they like made it so like
there was real problems.
Yeah, it was because they didn't obviously prep the space shuttle for a flight to outer space. So they're like, okay, now we got to go to this this space station and get oxygen. And
so Tish, Kelly Preston's character, she figured out one time she read a book on Morse code, so she's contacted them the entire duration while they're in there to try to communicate to them that they're going to go get more oxygen from this new space station.
MH, your thoughts on these space scenes? I know you watched the movie just for us, so let's.
Here, and it was when I watched it, I was thinking they did in a retrospective, the movies since then have done a good job at continuity, because when they're talking about they're going to this Nautilus,
yes.
That was also a reference in Space Cowboys.
Okay.
And it's also in a couple other, I think Gravity, I think they might have mentioned it as well. But it's basically just a communication station set out there. It's pre-international space station, so it was nice for them to at least reference or follow the continuity. But I thought they were kind of funny. And the fact that I had was upon launch, no one had any face shields. There was no like self-contained uniforms they were in as you would normally see. So they totally weren't prepared, obviously, to go into space. But you would think if they're giving them the real deal, they're going to give them the spacesuit. You're going to get to walk the bridge. You're going to.
Well, so my question is so for continuity wise, yes, they shouldn't have these things, or they should be prepared. Right. You could go one way or the other. But those things obviously serve a purpose when you're going through the Earth's atmosphere. So without them, shouldn't their faces like be contorted and they burn up?
Not necessarily, because it's a pressurized cabin. But here's the other.
Well, then why do they have them in the first place?
Well, that's my next question is, because if you're into a launch code and things go wrong, you're pretty much going to be the focus of Michael's next subject. But so why even have the suits on? I would be on there in flip-flops, shorts, and a Hawaiian shirt, just riding it out.
And we know Tate Donovan would be, because that's what he showed up in.
Because if you make it into orbit, you're good. Then you can put your crazy suit on. It's the first thing you do when you see other space movies. As soon as they reach orbit, they've essentially gotten out of the Earth's gravity. First thing they do is pop their mask off and be like, all right, we're good to go. Why even put the suits on to begin with? It's just hot, and I'm sure it's not comfortable.
I will say, before they had the suits on, like when Andy was in there, like showing them around, she was very 80s hot.
Yeah.
She had the teardrops happening.
Yep. I did notice the halter top slash thing that she had on, although it was purple, which is not my favorite.
We have had multiple conversations about real boobs from the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, but yeah, I think they could have done a better job, but given it was filmed in 84, 85, released in 86, it's okay.
Okay. What I really enjoyed is the soundtrack. There was an Eric Clapton song from the 80s, and there was also the two Dire Straits songs. It made it feel like it was a real movie and not just a movie of the week. It gave it a little more gravitas. All right. And there's Lawrence and there's Mike. Mr. MH. Okay. Where are we at? 38. I think we're ready to go for. All right. Okay, well, this is Michael, and we're doing this thing live. Live things happen, and more live thing. It would give you the live experience. We're talking about Space Camp from 1986. Originally, it was going to be released in early 1986, but that didn't happen. And so it was released a little bit later in 1986 due to real life situations in the NASA program. All right, I'm not sure. Am I still on the internets? Hello, internets. Hello. All right, not sure if share the permalink. Google. All right, Google crashed. So Google crashed on Lawrence's end, on Glenn's end. I'm just gonna call him Glenn from now on. I don't recognize Lawrence as a real name. If Glenn was an African American gentleman who sold insurance, he wore like a good suit and like a fedora. I think I got a beard, like a salt and pepper beard for an African American. I would say that would be a good Lawrence name. And I think should I keep going? I don't know if I should keep going or not. For right now, I'm gonna call him Glenn because Glenn's not that Glenn's mama calls him Glenn. I'm gonna call him Glenn. All right. Okay. Well, I think we might do a part 1 and a part 2. So please stay tuned for a possibility of our. Okay. Well, I think I'm gonna sign off, and we'll be back to bring you back for Space Camp 2, where we'll round up. Well, what's left of the film for 1986 classic Space Camp, and then we'll discuss the tragedy that happened on January 28th, 1986. Okay. Well,